My name is Kiki Masuchelli. I'm an independent curator. I've been living in London since 2000, so I've been there for 15 years. My new project, it's a non-profit gallery that runs an exhibition program, but also a series of public programs. And it's mainly, we're working mainly with solo commissions, at least for the beginning for the first year of the project. So the idea is our focus is on Latin America, but not necessarily working with Latin American artists for the whole program. So the idea is to focus on knowledge about art historical narratives from Latin America, but also recent artistic production. The idea to do to work with solo commissions at the beginning is mainly because artists, if they're not represented by a gallery in London, or if they're not a super established artist, they probably will not have the chance to develop something a bit more significant in London. So our idea is to work closely with the artists on a kind of more intensive, long-term basis to develop the solo commissions for the whole space. It really depends on the project. I mean, your research process is very particular to a certain situation, a certain context. You have to really take into account, I think, well, there's many variables. First of all, your space, your budget, how much time do you have for research, how much of a budget you have for research. So I think there's in terms of research, as a curator, there's a difference between being a kind of academic researcher, where your research is completely theoretical, and in a curatorial research. Because a curatorial research involves lots of, besides practical aspects, and like how someone works, how fast they can work, if they're capable of doing this or that, but also kind of accumulated knowledge that you build about someone's practice over time. And so I think, well, the research is really, it really depends on the context. In the case of Brazil, I think, well, it's fundamental to understand, I guess, that contemporary art in Brazil didn't emerge from nowhere. Like we've had a modernity since the beginning of the 20th century. And I think that's something that someone who's not really familiar with the whole history may think that maybe a bit, like, oh, Brazilian art emerged now in the last 5 years out of nowhere, and that's definitely not the case. So I think it's very important to look into this trajectory of modernity in Brazil. So at least, these key moments of the early modernism in the 20s, and then the emergence of concrete and neo-concrete art in the late avant-gardes of the 50s. And then obviously, and how these practices evolved into kind of very particular experimentalism that today is internationally recognized as a very important contribution to general art history, not only a particular art history. So I think in order to understand contemporary art in Brazil, at least you need to to look at these key moments. And obviously there are like several other narratives that have been lost or suppressed. And I think what a movement that I see that I find very interesting, it's people from Brazil who are looking into and researching these lost narratives that are equally important. I think Brazil is very bad at documenting itself, and that's a problem for researchers and for the dissemination of knowledge around Brazilian art. But I think there's a new generation of people who are increasingly looking at those lost narratives. I think you have to be very. I think it's very important to find to have a to think about what do you want to say and what's your why are you doing this. And does it need to be said? I mean, like, what's your role in all that? I mean, because it could be only decoration if curating is just like bringing in a little water.